I can't hear us
Such a
anyway.
boring
I can't
part,
hear
isn't
us.
it?
No, they can't. But
Oh,
it lets get you into a little
Enthusiasm.
gets enthusiasm, builds the
Show it.
Hello, everybody.
shit we're working with.
Welcome to Holycroft Distillers Shooting the Shit. This is our first episode for 2024. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still in 23 mode. And we're back, and we're rusty, and we're slow. But that's all good because we've got someone who's going to carry the show tonight, and that's Justin Farmer from Whisky and Isolation.
I was going to say I was going to say I'm slower than you lot, but sure.
You're carrying it, mate. Didn't you get the memo?
Or
I did
hopefully, I've just got a little message saying that Facebook is having problems. So
Oh well.
hopefully people will be able to get us on Facebook. Otherwise, I mean, they'll just have to watch us later on. But we do have Ian Bruce saying good evening on YouTube. Hello, mate.
G'day.
Justin, hi.
Hello. How are we?
Lovely for you to join us. Thank you very much for being the first for 2024 and being our guinea pig. Yeah.
I'm actually pretty excited because I've actually been off the booze for about a week, which I know sounds very, very feeble, but for me, that's an incredible achievement. But obviously, I've poured one.
I'm hearing it. Antibiotics will do that.
Right now,
Well
it's
done.
It's one day.
Clap ourselves on the back. Well done, you.
Yeah.
Well done, me.
But
Right.
stuff that. Eh?
And on that note,
drinking tonight.
So what are we doing?
What-
We're so rusty. What are we doing?
well, what are we drinking?
What are
are
we
you drinking, Justin? What's in your glass?
I'm glad you asked. It's actually something a bit special for tonight. I thought it was, rather than doing something that was a little bit obvious, so I got my friends at Warps Harbour. So shout out to Rob, Tim, and Beck. They have given me a sample of their brand new stout cask that is coming out on the 14th of February.
I just got the
sounds
email
good.
about that
Very
today.
nice.
I
Yeah.
think it was. Yeah.
Show us
so
the colour. Let's have a look at the colour.
Can you?
Yeah. She's looking dark.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
so pretty
nice.
good.
Yeah. Pretty oily.
It's got some decent legs on it. Let's say that.
Yeah, nice.
Love
Very
that.
nice.
So I think the
I will-
email
I'll-
I saw says that you can also get it with a can of stout that was aged in the barrel,
Okay.
I think, as well.
in the original bourbon barrel. So Bishno Brewery is who they partnered with. Like the stout is like 10%, and like I believe it's all sold out, but they've got 25 cans that they've kind of set aside, and in Sullivan's Cove style, it's all going to a ballot. So
Yeah. Ballot for a can of stout.
yeah,
So 20 cans available, limited 1 can per ballot winner. And you've got to email in to be in the draw. Best thing to do is just jump on the all the mailing lists for everywhere, and then you get to know about these things.
Yeah.
But it's $20, normally $20 a can, and you can't get it anymore.
yeah.
So that'll be interesting. And what's the whiskey like?
It's bloody good, actually. I mean, it's 58% ABV, so it's got a bit. It's definitely got a bit of packs of punch, but it's pretty much liquid Rocky Road in a glass. You get kind of the bit of chocolate, you get kind of sweet marshmallow, and then you get fruity, like kind of raisins soaked in some sort of liquor. Yeah. I'm enjoying. Yeah.
Very nice.
Definitely jump on board there. 14th of Feb, I think Tim told me.
And we just had Whiskey's My Jam saying we'll be at the whiskey launch
The week before, which is
The week before. There you go.
There you go.
Well, speaking of good whiskey, we've been sent a little parcel, haven't we?
Well, yes.
Someone was very generous.
Someone was very generous. We've got a whole heap of Mad Scientist test tubes here.
Which I have to thank my wife for, by the way. She runs a little on the side, a little magic potion business.
Right.
That she does at markets, and I kind of I stole.
So
some
you've
of those
got
from her,
magic
her
potion for
basket.
adults, and she's got
Correct.
magic potion for kids. Yeah,
For
cool.
kids, exactly. Yeah.
So will we start with number one, or do we want to start with something else and then lead into
Should we say
talking
where they
about all
came
these?
from? Or do you think people worked it out?
Well, I think they might have worked it
You
out,
think?
given that it was his wife who packaged them up.
We're rusty. Maybe
didn't-
they're rusty as well.
Maybe.
They might be.
So Justin was kind enough to send us these samples for those playing along at home.
Thank
So
you
we've
very
got-
much, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We've got 3 samples here. Which let's fucking launch straight into it. So we've got the 3. These are the 3 samples of the bottles that are currently available on your website, aren't they?
Correct.
And hold on, let me just look. I've already did that. I did that already.
Well, you're not that
good.
rusty.
Yeah.
Good.
That's so efficient.
That's a bit
I
of
know.
pre-planning.
Did that
Spelled
ages ago.
isolation wrong. That made you look.
Don't fucking do that to me.
Anyway, back to the whiskey.
So we've got the 50 Flaming Parrots, which is the Spring Bay.
Yeah.
Reverse into Port Killara and Joy of
Correct.
6 Chief's Son Distillery.
Correct.
Which are 195, 185, and 220 for the Killara. Number one. Why don't we start there? What was that one?
So number one is the Spring Bay. So I've kind of ordered them. They're not in release order. They're kind of, I guess, in the order that I think probably will work best on your palates.
Okay.
So yes. So number one is Spring Bay with young Cam Brett, and that is a 50-year-old Para Vintage tawny cask from Seppelsfield. So kind of the story behind that one is Cam, with his connections over there, managed to get the last remaining wood of thanks. Mark's just talking about the tasting tubes. Yeah.
Yep. Reused.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Hobart
Well, actually, my
juice reuse recycle.
as an aside, my wife actually started using those for her potion business because she thought, oh, they're really good, and then got a whole load. So in a kind of in a weird way, they are Hobart whiskey tasting tubes. But
There you go.
Anyway, moving back to the whiskey.
Moving
So Cam's got had a relationship with Seppelsfield, managed to get the last remaining wood of this vintage. So obviously a 50-year-old vintage tawny cask, pretty special. Another distillery in Tasmania has done a finish in a similar cask, but this is a full maturation in the tawny cask. The reason behind the name 50 Flaming Parrots is 50 because obviously it being a 50-year-old cask, but flaming, and you might be able to get from both the nose, but particularly from the palate when you taste it, is the fact that the casks have been heavily toasted and heavily charred because the staves were like literally that thick. So to kind of really get deep into the wood, we sort of heavily charred it, and then the parrots. As I said, it's a Para vintage tawny cask, and Seppelsfield call all their vintages Para because of the Para River that runs through the Barossa. I was trying to explain to my daughter about the cask that I was using, and she thought I had it in a parrot cask. So as an ode to her, it's 50 Flaming Parrots. So
Nice, very nice.
Very nice. Now Facebook has well and truly fucked us. So I'm gonna post up a link for everyone for YouTube because we need everybody to be able to watch.
Oh yes,
Absolutely. But that's There's
Yeah,
a lot
it's
going on
good.
the
It's a
nose
big
there.
whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the
Yeah, it
ABV?
is. 56.
56.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
nice.
Yeah. So all the so far, like I mean, my sweet spot from an ABV perspective is 50 to 56. We never. I mean, that's my personal preference. We don't try and crowbar the whiskies into that like ABV range, but like when I'm getting samples back from my partners, we do always kind of test them at 50, 52, 54, 56, because that's where I like to have it. But, you know, if we kind of go, shit, you know, it would work better, or, you know, we still need to, you know, dial it down, then we will. But if we think it kind of tastes awesome between 50 and 56, then we'll choose like the best ABV between that range.
It's citrus notes going, isn't it?
I'm just nosing it. It's
This is the first one.
it's
Then
glorious nose.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
lovely. And then
definitely recommend that one to anyone.
definitely recommend it. It's so how sorry, I wasn't quite paying attention then. How long was that in the barrel for?
I didn't even tell you how long it was in the barrel for. So
That's
that's
good. I didn't miss it then.
No, you didn't. No, so
More than 2 years.
it's a 3-year-old whiskey.
Okay.
Surprisingly smooth.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
that is lovely.
and I don't know if you guys get like kind of the a bit of salt on the end, but if you guys know sort of Spring Bay, obviously they've got 2 locations over there in Taz. They've got you know, Cambridge, where they kind of work out of, and then they've also got a barrel house in obviously in up there on the coast in Spring Bay. Yeah. So that's where the cask was actually matured, and so obviously you get the salt, you know, the salt air and whatever, and that's kind of one of the pretty cool characteristics out of Spring Bay that I love.
Going back to the cask, so it was a full-size cask. What size was the original cask? Did you break it down, recoup it to smaller cask, or keep the original size, or what was your approach there?
Oh, that was cam. So it was basically bits of, it was staves that he basically got cooped together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
like he was able to, before like it was cooped together, he actually kind of showed me like the individual staves and like literally where the liquid had, how deep the liquid had seeped into, and then kind of was chatting through, you know, what the strategy was going to be to kind of get that out. So
no, that's even just in the empty glass, the nose on that is lovely.
Yep.
I reckon tomorrow morning that would smell just as good. In an unwashed glass the next day, I reckon that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
That's what we used to say. This is a pour yourself a glass, have a sip, go mow the lawn, and come back.
Yeah, sitting on it definitely.
It's interesting.
It's open and
Over the holidays, I haven't drunk much whiskey at all, and
Slack ass, you haven't been trying very
No,
hard.
no,
you've got to have a
it's
second
been rum
sip.
weather,
Oh, yeah.
and unfortunately, it's been a bit of Bundy and Coke, but bit of a comfort drink. But anyway, the reason I mention that is this sort of reminds me why I like whiskey. It's like, oh yeah, that's why I like whiskey.
yeah.
As a second pour, I get sort of a honeycomb, crunchy type action on the nose, slightly salty. And this is torture for everyone watching at home. It's like, you fuckers, how can? Sorry, but not sorry.
We know where you can get some if you want it.
We know where you can get some. You can get from whiskeyandIsolation.com.au.
Now maybe it's a good time to actually talk about whiskey in isolation and what is whiskey in isolation.
Who, what, where, and when.
Yeah, give us the backstory, mate.
who, what, yeah, why and when.
Yeah.
Well, and amazingly enough, with the name, like it started in COVID, in isolation, and I actually remember, Crafty, like I was at a dinner, and we were having a social media conversation, either by Messenger or whatever, and you asked me when COVID ends, and I think we were only about 7 or 8 months into it. He goes, are you going to be changing the name? Is it going to be Whisky Out of Isolation? And so it actually got me thinking, like, very early on, well, kind of, is it a name that does like have a use by date on it? But then, like, I kind of actually thought, well, there's kind of more to the name than the fact that it was born out of COVID. It's like the fact that it's how I like to drink my whiskey is like, neat, like no ice. A lot of people say, what, with on your own with no friends, which I guess is it's partly true as well. But also it's
What if I do?
but it's also all that I do. So there are some independent bottlers and distilleries, that will do, gins, liqueurs, vodkas or whatever. All I'm interested in doing is collaborating with boutique distilleries and putting out interesting whiskey. So again, when I say whiskey in isolation, it's like that's all you'll get from the brand. But I guess before I was even bottling, the reason for kind of the whiskey in isolation was I was sat at home and annoying my wife, kind of going, you need to be doing something. You need to have like some sort of hobby, and so I just started Instagram, like blogging, like whiskey reviews, and it was a bit of everything, and then it kind of focused in more on Australian distilleries and promoting what we were doing locally, and wanting to sort of championing distilleries that were impacted by sort of COVID, that couldn't have like their cellar doors open and kind of interact with their potential customers. And it was through this, the blogging, that I started developing relationships and closer conversations with distilleries. And I thought, okay, well, a step further than just kind of me, a nobody kind of blogging about whiskey. Maybe we can kind of help some of these distilleries like a little bit more, and kind of work with them and do some projects. And I guess with the independent bottling kind of scene, there's kind of like two extremes that that there really were. There's like the Tim Duckett's at Hartwood, that like I almost don't call him an independent sort of bottler anymore. Master blender, but like he buys spirit, takes it away to his own little shed and works his kind of magic. So that's kind of the one extreme of doing things. And then there'll be guys who will go into a distillery, they'll taste a cask and go, oh, that's really good. Can I buy that barrel and bottle it under my brand? And that was something that I definitely wasn't interested in doing, mostly because I thought, like, kind of, who am I to kind of say, hey, this is an exceptional cask that that you should kind of buy. It's fine, someone like Julian and Brooke from Whisky and Element, who've obviously got the whiskey sets, independent sort of bottlings that they do. That's different. You'd sit up and kind of go, cool. If these guys who've like run World Whiskey Bars, the year for how many years, say this is an exceptional cask, you'd probably kind of accept that. Oh yeah, it probably is an exceptional cask. But who am I to kind of say that? But also, it was like, well, what would I actually be adding to the whiskey like scene by just buying a bottle of or a cask of whatever distilleries bourbon cask, or whatever, and putting it out there. Why would someone say, "Cool, let's go and buy, Justin's Whiskey in Isolation sort of bottling"? Well, why don't they just buy the distilleries?
Yeah.
Own bottling. So for me, like, the whole approach really came from me being a whiskey lover, not anyone in the scene, not being a whiskey geek or anything, just kind of going, I really want to support Australia, really want to support the smaller guys, but I want to be doing something different. And so to be doing something different, it's about how can we put a spin on that distillery, while still maintaining the distillery sort of DNA, but enabling them to kind of do things that they've never done before. So it doesn't have to be wacky. It could be a bourbon cask if they've never done a bourbon cask, but it's about me being that, either being a vehicle for them doing something different, or me putting out ideas that they've kind of haven't thought about. And so, the stuff we do, it might be wacky casks, it might be finishes. We're experimenting with grains, we're experimenting with distillation processes. So all sorts of kind of cool things, but it all has to be a distillery first, and everything has to have that spin on it and have some uniqueness to it.
So besides being a whiskey lover, what was your background prior to COVID that gave you the free time to start putting words around your time absorbing drinking?
Well, my background, nothing to do with like sort of the liquor industry at all. Like, so I used to work in property,
right,
and did so for 20-25 years, but it was doing marketing and PR and business development for those companies. So so the background really is launching brands, promoting new ideas. So I guess that's kind of the semi-transferable skills that I've had.
And apparently you're a reasonably low maintenance house guest.
I am, and Mark is a very lovely host.
So how many different releases have you put out? So you've been running since when in COVID? When did you start releasing?
Well, the blog started like a couple of months into COVID, but the first release was May 2022.
Yeah, right.
So in terms of release-wise, we're 80, 90 months in.
So not all that long ago, and you put out what, three releases? So wham, 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 and you've built the brand very, very quickly, and it's a really tight brand, as in it's very easy to see the story and understand it straight away. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So you've
I mean, 7 releases so far there've been.
Oh, 7 releases.
So there's the 4 previous, and then the 3 that are currently out.
So 4 are sold out.
We've got Hobart, King Lake, Quiet Fan, Spirit Thief, and Old Kempton as previous releases. And then so then the current, obviously being the Spring Bay that we've just had and quite enjoyed. Number 2, what's number 2?
So number 2 is the Kalara, which is the newest of the releases, which was released just before Christmas at maybe a little bit more than just before Christmas. So at Whisky Abbey in Melbourne, which run by Jose and the team at Casa de Vinas. So that is.
I can already see in pouring it. It looks very, very rich and thick. It pours quite syrupy.
It's very oily.
Very oily. There's some legs on that one.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Holy moly!
My notes for this one are like it's like a latte with scones, jam, and cream. So it's a French oak tawny cask, just under 5 years, which has then been transferred to a bourbon cask for another 12 months. So the total maturation time, if you want to do the maths, is just under 6 years.
Yeah, nice.
I guess the interesting thing about the American oak bourbon cask is it isn't a cask from a single distillery. So I was working with a barrel broker in Tasmania that is now no longer. I don't know if they're still seeking buyers or whatever, but they basically had a whole heap of premium bourbon staves from various distilleries, and basically this cask was custom built. So 100-liter American oak kind of hybrid distillery cask.
Wow.
Which
there is a lot going on in that glass.
Sure is.
And you don't even need to get close to it to smell it.
I'm gonna make a call on this. It's Clara.
Yeah.
There's a real candy floss sort of sweetness on the nose. Every Clara I've had, I've picked it. I think it's really, really beautiful. And when I nosed it straight away, I went, man, I could almost say that was Clara without you telling me it was Clara, which is it's a big statement.
Candy floss.
Candy floss, marshmallow, yeah.
S'mores, that's what it is.
S'mores. Yeah, good one.
What are s'mores?
So chocolate biscuits with melted marshmallow.
Marshmallow in it.
Oh, yeah.
Marshmallow sandwich.
Oh,
Yeah.
bring on the Girl Guides camps.
Yeah, for the s'mores.
Yeah, I'm not.
The s'mores not drinking whiskey.
So what's the oldest whiskey that
wow.
you've released so far, do you think? Would this be up there? Being a 6-year?
That is good.
Yeah. The only one that's older is the next one that you're going to have.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Ooh,
But I'm sorry, carry on, Craig.
Great. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit excited because I haven't drunk much whiskey lately. Sort of remembering why I love whiskey.
Yeah.
It's quite different to the nose. It's got a real jamminess and marshmallow thing going on the taste. Very jammy.
Yeah.
To my mind, anyway.
Yeah.
And then
Very Moorish.
very Moorish.
Yeah, well
absolutely.
Well done.
That one is definitely. My dad loves a rich, fruity, sweet whiskey. If you gave him a bottle of that, it would probably last about 3 days. And that's only because he has to sleep and work in between.
Yeah. So and that one's 52% ABV.
Okay.
Well done, mate. Well done.
Very nice.
So 2 winners, those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the spin on that one obviously is the wacky American oak bourbon cask, but it's also the first time that Christie has finished in a bourbon cask. So again, so with Spring Bay obviously was the full maturation in the 50-year-old Para Vintage Tawny cask. So that's like a really rare cask, although they've obviously done port before. That's a rare wood that they won't, it's very hard to get hold of. And then obviously the Clara is the bourbon finish, which they've never done before. So
you got 80 bottles out of that. So what sort of barrel size are we talking for the finish? Yeah, how big a barrel was that?
Well, it was actually. So the interesting thing with that one is I actually purchased half of that, half of the tawny barrel.
Yeah.
So as I said, Christy had this amazing sort of whiskey, and she said, "Look, I reckon you'd kind of really like it." but it was going to be a little bit too big for me. I like to kind of work with 100, 110 bottles kind of maximum for a release.
Mhm.
But she had this kind of this tawny cask that she thought I would like, and I said, well, that's fine, but like I don't, the brand isn't just me buying the cask off you. That doesn't interest me. So it was then about what we could actually finish it in. So it's so it was originally a 100-liter tawny cask, but I bought half of that. But the bourbon cask that we kind of built is a 100-liter bourbon cask. So we only put like it was like a half filled finish. So there was only 50 liters in the bourbon cask, but that bourbon cask is now fully filled with Kalara Spirit as a second fill.
Right. So another future release.
I reckon it's still got some give in it.
There's a bit of give in that.
Oh,
In that certainly.
Oh, there'll be plenty in that bourbon cask. As I said, it was only in there for 12 months. So yeah, there'll be plenty.
Lovely. Very, very nice.
I'm fascinated by the nose on the empty glass.
Yeah, it's
Changing.
it is.
The aromatics on the whiskey versus the taste, and the aromatics versus the aromatics in an empty glass. They're all different.
Yeah.
That's a journey, that one. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So how do you go about choosing your next release? I assume you've got a few different barrels on the go and a few different things that you've been working with, and then you're just waiting to see which ones become ready, or you've got a sort of a set schedule that you're working on, or how do you establish your next few releases?
Well, as you guys know, it's all well and good to have a nice little spreadsheet, but whiskeys are ready when they're ready. So it's a little bit of a moving beast, but I guess what I try and do is there's just like a mixture of timelines in terms of how I partner and buy barrels. So like some projects are from scratch, some are like midway through the maturation process, and some are like fully matured, but we then like put the whiskey in isolation spin on it. So that kind of enables me to kind of at least have a little bit of a program and schedule that you can play around with like a little bit sort of more easily. So the ones that you're starting from scratch, it's a little bit harder to kind of say when they'll be ready. You can make assumptions based on past projects that the distillery's kind of done. So they're sort of penciled in, but then you kind of need some certainty, a little bit more certainty, because I'm trying to do like 4 releases a year, do them on a quarterly basis, so you can kind of go, oh, I've definitely got a gap in 12 months or 18 months. So that's when like I kind of might go to one of the partners and kind of go, have you got a whiskey nearly matured that we can kind of have a look at what we can do with to sort of play so that it will be ready in 12 months or 18 months. But there's still like always that little bit of kind of unknown and flexibility, which is why I've tried to sort of build up a few more projects that gives me some wriggle room if things are like kind of delayed or sort of pushed back, that there's still there are still projects every quarter. So like I've got potentially 3 or 4 ready in the next 6 to 9 months, but I'll only release one in March and one in June, July, one in August, one in November. So, and it enables those other ones that are ready, I can just like push into the new year.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into lucky number 3, which also has a gorgeous color to it.
Mhm.
The Joy of Six.
The Joy of Six.
Oh,
Something I
Very-
don't know about.
Very interesting name and very interesting social media posts.
oh yeah, no, I had some great fun with that. But it is kind of like sort of we're saying that some of the like the naming side of thing is just great fun. Like that's kind of my marketing sort of PR kind of background, but it's also, I guess, a little bit of a nod to the amazing work that the Scotch Malt Whisky Society do, because I always very much enjoy the fun that those guys have, not only with the namings of their bottles, but also the tasting notes. I mean, they can. There's kind of like a fine line between like fun and overtly sort of wanky, I guess. But I think they kind of play to the overt wankiness, as it were, and kind of like really kind of go that whole bit. And yeah.
Sometimes you have to lean into these things.
You do. And I didn't want to kind of, I obviously like imitation is the greatest form of flattery, or whatever the phrase is. I didn't want to kind of copy every single thing that they did. So I've kind of dialed back my tasting notes, but definitely kind of the namings of bottles was definitely inspired with like kind of how they kind of create things, because it's amazing how the names of whiskies definitely does help when you're kind of having conversations with people, when you're telling stories, to kind of just go, cool, this is like our latest bourbon cask or whatever. That's kind of fine. But if there's like a name and a story behind it, then then people kind of remember it.
You find that once you've named your whiskey, it sort of takes on a life of its own and becomes something a bit bigger than it is.
A little bit. And when like I talk to people at events, people will often refer to the whiskies by the name. So they'll go, oh yeah, and I really liked mull it over that you did with King Lake or whatever. It's more than just the distillery. It's the whiskey as well. So yeah, having a story and having a name and a reason behind the name just kind of provides that little bit of connection. I think
At Craftworks we got a micro release, I would say, and it's sold at markets more than anywhere else. And it's called Yeah. It's just called Yeah, right? And the bottles that I've sold purely on the name, people have tasted it, right? And they go, why is it called Yeah? And I go, it's called Yeah because when we're putting it together, we got people to taste it and give feedback and that, and they come back and they were going, yeah. And then people at the cellar door or markets, they taste it and they go, yeah, or they try not to say yeah, and it creates an interesting conversation, I must say. So I agree with you. The naming process is that's a lot of fun, and I agree with what Todd said. When it has a name, then it takes on an identity. It's not just a cask or a group of casks. It's got its own identity, and it just goes from there.
Yeah, and it's great fun then for me and my kind of photographer and videographer Alison that I kind of use. I'll kind of say, this is the name of the whiskey. Let's kind of do something kind of fun, like around that. So when we did reversing the port, we ran the entire video literally in reverse, and so we had great fun, kind of just like storyboarding that out and just like planning like how we were going to kind of actually shoot the video and kind of get things kind of happening sort of backwards, and kind of what that might look like. And also Craft, you mentioned with like the Joy of Six, we had some pretty cool, like little photos of me. Well, you didn't see me lying in bed, but you kind of got my tattooed arms. So you kind of knew I was there in the bedside table. When you kind of, pull it out, there's like bottles of the Joy of Six. So I was kind of going, what do you keep in your bedside table? And it's like,
I remember that one was very clever.
Oh, well done.
yeah.
Where did the name come from for that one?
So the Joy Six actually comes out of the fact. So the guys at Chief Sun invited me to the distillery and to the bonded warehouse, and they had 4 barrels of what they call like kind of their antique stock. So it was the first ever whiskey that they'd laid down in these French oak Apera barrels, but it was always kind of done as a just as a way to kind of see how these barrels would kind of go and how far you could take them. And it was never of a size or a scale from their perspective that they would have enough for to actually release as a Chief Sun release. And they said, "Oh, but do you want to try it? We've had these barrels for a while. We don't know kind of what to do with them." And I tried it, and it was so different, and I knew it was going to be quite polarizing, that it appealed to me like straight away. And so I was able to procure these 4 small format barrels that had basically been aging for 6 years and 6 months. And I took the first, I chose 2 of them and married them together. And so that marriage is what you've got in your glass now, the Joy 6. The other 2 barrels have also been married together, but they were then put into another fresh first fill French oak Apera cask for another 6 months, so to take the full maturation to 7 years. And it's now currently sitting in a American oak rye cask that was used to age maple syrup, and
Wow.
and that will sit in there for 7 months. So the sequel will be 7 years and 7 months, and will be called the Magnificent Seven. Well, that's the working title anyway.
Yeah.
But the Joy 6 is based off the fact this is 6 years, 6 months French oak Apera small format casks married together. So it's pretty big.
Was it a fairly heavy char on the barrels? Can you recall?
Yeah. But
And
small format.
and small format, yeah.
Mm.
So it's like it's
big.
it is big.
But-
It's full on leather and musty libraries.
yeah.
It doesn't hit you as like
The
the
hot tank.
previous one. You could. I held the glass out here, and I could still smell it. This, you've got to get a bit closer to it, but then once you're in there,
Nothing premature about it, is there?
no.
You had to go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Oh, you'd been storing that one up, hadn't you? You were.
Speaking from experience.
I could just smell it all.
Just keep your fingers out of it.
This is like an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Mm. It is rich. It is oily. It is syrupy, and
She's got legs.
And she
She
knows how to use them.
definitely
Is that what you're saying?
surprisingly smooth.
Mm.
Surprisingly smooth.
Doesn't have that really tannic note that a lot of
Small formats,
small
no.
formats
Yeah,
have, which
but
is
it's-
really nice.
The char is there. I get that char in the back. It's just sort of sitting there and hums.
Yeah.
Mm.
But it's
Adds
quite.
depth to it.
I mean, I obviously love it sort of neat on its own. But towards the end of last year, I had a friend over who was a bit of he kind of likes his cocktails I'm not a big cocktail maker at all. But like I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try and do something kind of real simple. I like an old fashioned. I had no simple syrup kind of made, but I had maple syrup in the cupboard, and I always have some Angostura bitters. So I made a salted maple syrup old fashioned with this whiskey, and like both me and him just like motored through like half a bottle of this drinking old fashioned, and that's kind of then what inspired kind of like the sequel, because we had the other 2 barrels in this new French oak first fill of Pera, just to kind of give it an extra woomph. But we were kind of we kind of on tasting it kind of there wasn't enough difference between what we'd already put out with the Joy 6 and kind of what we were going for with the sequels. So we kind of knew that it needed something else. And I basically said, well, if we can get hold of a maple syrup barrel to kind of do a quasi take on this old fashioned that we kind of created out of the first release, that would be kind of great. And the fact that it's also an American oak rye cask that barrel aged the maple syrup, I'm kind of pretty excited to see really how it kind of develops. Yeah. I mean, it's only been in there 8 weeks or whatever, so it's got a bit of a way to go, but we'll probably check it in 2 or 3 months.
Do you reckon you'll be able to get
much
a bit
though, would it?
Yeah. Do you reckon you'll get a bit of spice out of that rye barrel come through, or
that's part of the excitement for me, where you don't 100% know for sure.
You know what I reckon would go well with that? A dark soda.
It would do.
A long raised dark soda.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah.
There's a couple of bottles in the fridge. If you want to grab one, Tom.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
This one, I thought I better put
Long Gray's. Full
he can't even be bothered getting up.
Look at him. Great sponsors.
He's got wheels.
A chair.
A chair. Other side.
It's easier if you get up.
Yeah, let's see him reach in there now.
Oh, look at that.
Coin
slot.
Yeah.
It's all over telly now.
Dead sexy.
Going out to the world, that coin slot.
Yeah, I reckon
scarred people for life, that.
I reckon a long range dark soda would go quite well with that one.
Thank you, Long Grays, for being a sponsor.
Well, we don't have any sponsors this year.
Yes, we do.
We do up until the middle of the year.
I was in the middle of the year. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I better play the credits at the end then, eh? Long Range are a very generous sponsor.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to pour another one now.
Somehow
At the middle of the year.
It's a good thing we don't get paid for this, because we'd be docked.
We'd be shit. I'll do a little bit more. I mean, look, obviously someone gets value out of us being dickheads, but I think mainly us, really. But yeah, I reckon the long range would work really well in that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put too much in. Just a spritz.
Keen to hear what you think.
Have you tried the dark soda?
I don't think so.
It's good on its own.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
the nose of the whiskey comes out, and then the
it does,
dark soda comes out on top.
Yeah.
I get a lot of it almost turns it into a orange and this Jaffa type thing going on the nose.
That's very drinkable.
Oh my lord! There you go.
Yeah,
there's
a very simple mix.
That is a great mix. That one, I think the ginger and orange peel with the smoked vanilla definitely complement. Yeah, the tobacco and blackberry and leather. That makes it really refreshing as well.
Nice.
No, you're good. You're good. There you go. Give that a go. the long rays.
I will.
Which way am I going?
Yeah,
Long
there you
rays
go.
dark
Dark
soda
soda.
with it. That's a good mix.
Cheers,
And
James.
yeah, and although like I kind of go whiskey in isolation. Yeah, just drink my whiskey kind of neat. I kind of feel over summer you just do need that.
Well, that's the
alternative.
thing. I agree. Personally, I prefer my whiskey to be neat. I don't add ice. I rarely add water, unless they specifically say you should add a drop of water to this. And I generally don't like a mixer.
Apart from soda water. Highball soda water during summer.
Yep.
Good solid glugs
But
of
any
whiskey.
other
That's
mixer
refreshing.
with a whiskey, I mean, certainly not a Coke. No.
No.
But the
And if
dark
you
soda
watch our friend
does
Mark
work
Rainier
well.
drink whiskey, it's basically 1 for 1.
Water and whiskey.
Water and whiskey is
Yeah.
incredible. Not Coke and whiskey. No.
No.
Mark would never do that.
There you go. So who are you keeping your eye on in terms of people you think you'd like to work with in the future that are doing something interesting?
Look, it's
everyone.
It's like everyone, like kind of like look. The reason for being is really championing Australian sort of whiskey, and that's what it's all about, to have a conversation about Australia and kind of what great stuff that we're kind of sort of doing here. So like the partners to date, I've obviously got to enjoy the whiskey, but it's also about like people that you kind of are going to have fun with, and you kind of like having a chinwag with, and are open to kind of doing things like a little bit sort of differently. And when I first started, it was about approaching distilleries. Now it's quite nice that like kind of distilleries are approaching me. And I guess that's what it's about. It's about if you're on the same page, and you've kind of got like sort of ideas that are fun and quirky, and that are gonna get people having kind of conversations, then that's what I'm here for. I'll tell you for nothing, I make no money out of doing this. This is purely for like the love of whiskey and the love of Australian distilleries, and just kind of getting out there and having fun. So like I'd never want to kind of particularly like single out a distillery, kind of going, oh yeah, it'd be great if I kind of worked with them. It's all about having just those right connections. But I've got some interesting things in the works, and some kind of pretty cool partners that are open to kind of doing some interesting things. So yeah.
And obviously, the distilleries that you have worked with thus far and done releases with, obviously they've been pretty happy. I'm assuming with the outcomes, because they're coming back again. So looking through your previous catalogue of King Lake, Hobart, Old Kempton, and Spirit Thief, and then looking at your upcoming for 2024, we've got King Lake again, Chief Son again, and Hobart. Yeah. Correct. So that in its own right speaks volumes, I think, in terms
partners.
People seeing it as a partnership and a long-term partnership, as opposed to just a one and done. So kudos for building that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do sort of before I kind of jump and get sort of too many kind of distilleries. You kind of then end up with kind of like a bit of a unwieldy sort of beast. Like, it'd be nice to start having like those kind of repeat releases. So there's kind of again like sort of not only stories for individual releases, but then kind of like a vertical story in terms of like kind of how we're kind of developing relationships and ideas with the distilleries themselves.
Yeah. No, so it's interesting, and I'm certainly excited to see the next release. These three that you've sent us, and thank you so much for sending such generous samples to us. Have all been
Unique.
great.
They're all very different.
All unique,
Yeah.
all very different, but all very, very good.
What
How do you
order
know
were you? What order were you three put them in?
I think the order that you sent them from a flight perspective, the order that you sent them was spot on.
Yeah.
You couldn't have had the Chief's Son as the first one. Well, maybe could have flipped the Kempton and the Chief's Son. I'm not sure, but
Didn't have Kempton.
oh, sorry,
Kalara,
no, Kalara, the
He
Kalara.
couldn't flip them.
No, couldn't flip.
Couldn't
Couldn't flip. No,
both,
no. Sorry, the Kalara couldn't. You possibly could have flipped the Kalara and the Chief's Son,
No.
but
Personal
certainly
preference.
don't. Personal preference, but
yeah.
don't. I mean, they were
it
as
can't
a
fault the
collection.
order.
As a collection, they were spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have said with the chief. I mean, the reason I put the Chiefs on at the end, I should have said because they've got a portion of peated malt in their mash bill embed. So no, I'm not too sure everyone picks it. I don't know if you guys did, but I get
Subtle. I don't know.
I picked a char, so maybe it was.
Maybe that was the char.
Yeah, maybe it was a bit of the peated influence as well. Yeah,
It's very, very subtle.
Yeah.
It's the thing.
Yeah.
A peated in Australian whiskey is still a relatively rare thing, isn't it?
Mm.
There's not a lot of peated Australian whiskies available.
Compared to unpeated, no.
Compared to unpeated, certainly there is a glass of unpeated whiskies.
Yeah.
And generally, Australian whiskies tend to head towards those tawnies and aperas and the wine barrels. So of the unpeated, the straight bourbon barrel, I think, would be the rarity almost, or the minority amongst Australian releases. I think that's right.
Of the small to mid-size.
Of the small to mid-size,
distilleries,
Yeah.
Probably,
Yeah. So everyone's trying to compete for those interesting barrels and those interesting barrel finishes to set them apart within the Australian scene. So to see a straight bourbon barrel is unusual for me anyway. I quite like a straight bourbon barrel.
I love a straight bourbon barrel.
Over Christmas, I was down in Victoria seeing my family down in Colac, and of course you're down on in Barwon Heads there, and of course we've got Bellarine Distillery just there in Drysdale, which I had the pleasure of visiting, and obviously you have a very close relationship with Russ and Craig there. Tell us about your relationship with those boys.
Well, that I was moving down to Bowen Heads with no job, just purely for a sea change. But we've had the house down in Bowen Heads for a while, and used to go into the distillery. But like I then obviously started doing the blog, and for but by hook or by crook, I obviously kind of didn't tweet. I Instagram posted that I was kind of going down there to kind of check them out, and so they actually kind of went out of their way to kind of welcome me when I when I came down again and said, oh, it'd be good to sort of have a chat, and I was purely down there just to chew the card with my kind of social media blogging hat on, just kind of wanting to find out a little bit more about what they were up to, and Craig told me his story, how he became head distiller at the distillery, where he basically just stuck around like a bad smell, basically, and annoyed the crap out of Russ, until like Russ said, "Oh, cool. Well, if you want to kind of do this, then you can," and just kind of being slightly kind of facetious, and after a few gins and a few whiskeys, I said, so if I kind of stick around like a bad smell, might there be a job here for me as well? And they went, "Oh, why are you looking for some work?" I said, "Well, yeah, relocating permanently down here in a couple of months." And they said, "Well, absolutely." So I haven't even really had to stick around like a bad smell. I just kind of threw it out there.
You had to threaten to be a bad smell, and that was enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stop you being a bad smell.
So when we were at the conference and you were there, I just assumed you were helping out. I didn't realize you were working there.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah, because you and Crafty kind of with it, came down for a bit of a tasting, but so the weekends I kind of I man the markets, which is the stuff that I really love to do. I like facing the public, telling the stories, kind of selling and just selling my passion, but also hopefully getting over the passion of the Bellarine Distillery as well. So I do that for them, and then 3 days a week though I'm kind of captain odd job in the distillery itself. Lugging barrels around, filling bottles, labeling bottles, whatever kind of needs to be done. And it's just kind of
sounds like
another job description I know.
How he gets paid.
Oh, okay. There's a slight difference.
There's a slight difference there. Yeah, you've been doing it for how long and have earned nothing?
It's a hobby.
Yeah.
On the way up here. However, on the way up here, I was telling Craig a story, Crafty, a story about looking at my super account, and there was this entry in it saying Craftworks Distillery. I freaked out because I thought I'd bought something through my super fund. Which would have really done some damage to the super fund. It was that one time that I got paid.
I don't have to.
Don't get used to it.
Yeah, don't get used to it. It's the only a once a year thing, if I'm lucky.
So, do you think we'll see a Whisky in Isolation Bellarine release?
Maybe.
Maybe.
There may or may not be something happening, but whether that is a Bellarine Distillery release or a Whisky in Isolation release is TBC. Look, that without saying too much, the approach had always been that it was a Bellarine Distillery release. But Craig may or may not have said to me before Christmas, would you be interested in it being a Whisky in Isolation release? But I don't know. It's just a weird thing for me. Like when you're working, we've got a great relationship in terms of me working for them and having my thing, it works like really well, because like they kind of draw on my passion, my connections, how I can speak about their whiskey at markets and events, and I kind of benefit because they actually sell my whiskey over the bar at the distillery door. And so there's that nice collaboration, which is what I love most about the Australian whiskey industry. I just don't know, like, if like working for them and then having their whiskey as my release kind of is like that sort of that blurry line that may or may I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But the reason why I'm still thinking about it is I tasted it from the barrel just before Christmas, and it's tasting really good. And so if it goes on that same trajectory, I'm kind of going again. It's like kind of how do you kind of wrestle that sort of idea that the Bellarine Distillery is still growing as a whiskey distillery business. It's like why would they want to kind of offload a whiskey that has got the potential to be really good, or more than really good, like the way that it's going. I would much rather be supporting them, because they're a business employing 35 people, rather than me, who just loves whiskey and is kind of doing it for fun. I'd rather benefit them,
Yeah.
The other way of looking at that is that they're still a small distillery that needs support in the Australian market,
and also is supportive of the Australian market,
and
as
is very
well.
supportive of the Australian market.
Yeah. I think there's in the immortal words, and to bastardize and paraphrase of Bill Lark, what is it? The rising tide floats all boats. Both growing brands that support each other can only both mutually benefit from a good release. Well, certainly. So we've just cracked while I was there, after spending an awful lot of money drinking a lot of their gin.
As you do.
Between myself, my dad, and a couple of mates, all I could afford was a small bottle. But this is the Oak series, which is matured in red wine and bourbon barrels, 52%, and that is that's lovely, jubbly.
It's fantastic, but it also brings us on to what we're talking about prior to going live about bottle sizes.
The bottle size. So you've settled on a 500ml bottle for all of your releases. What are your feelings around the small bottle and the sub $100 price point as a very broad topic?
It is a very broad
topic, but focus a bit on markets, because you've got experience in market environments, and so the sub 100, how does that play out in markets environments?
I'm going to answer both elements of the question, hopefully kind of together, because it's an interesting thing, because like on the socials we still have like so many people moaning about Australia distilleries doing 500ml bottles. And it's interesting that like Bellarine, we've got a 700 bottle. So like to really to kind of like excite those guys who are upset with 500ml, but then obviously doing a 200, so that will then piss them off, because it's like, oh, you got a 200. But I think the whiskey industry doesn't like always, or whiskey consumers don't always understand kind of the fact that you can't just cater for that little kind of niche of sophisticated whiskey connoisseur for one of a better kind of way of phrasing things. And craft, as you said, like working at markets is a completely different ball game to working at a whiskey event, where the reason people are coming to the event is to drink whiskey and taste kind of whiskey, and they're going into an event with a knowledge of kind of bottle sizing and pricing. And we and the Bellarine Distillery, when we kind of started selling whiskies at markets, you're going along to the market probably to kind of buy your eggs, your bread, the farmers who got got their kind of nice sausages or whatever, and then they kind of see but we kind of working well, because then people kind of go, a distillery, great to have a taste, and we have all the jokes about kind of, it's a bit early, and you kind of, and we've got like a little clock that's got like 5 o'clock all the way around, and whatever, and we have all that sort of little bit of fun, but you're still selling alcohol in the morning, but for a starter, and to a crowd that are predominantly there for their fresh produce. And then within that crowd, you're always, there will be people who are whiskey drinkers, but probably then only a small proportion of those are kind of hardcore whiskey drinkers. So the Bellarine Distillery limited releases were 295, and we experimented with one or two of those limited edition releases, and I had to have like sort of mattresses and cushions kind of around the stand to kind of cushion the blow of people like falling over when you'd kind of tell them the price. But even 220 is kind of still up there when you're kind of going to a market.
Do you find there's sort of ceilings though on that people go to 100, they're happy with it. Then there's that next bracket that's like 150, and then you get up to the 200 spends.
There wasn't like kind of any sort of obvious kind of sort of point of people kind of going, this is where I'll sort of spend up to. What we kind of found was, if you kind of have like a conversation and then lead up to the price, that's where kind of things would actually like kind of fall away, because people would kind of go, it's whiskey, I want to kind of try it, and then and $220 would just kind of like go, what's $220? I don't have $220. So we actually started reverse engineering it and kind of have the conversation. What do you usually drink? And if they're kind of going, I like my my Johnny Walker or a Chivas Regal, you kind of go, cool, that's fine. You don't judge a person on kind of what they have, but you kind of know where their sort of budget kind of tends to be. So we're a lot more. I'm a lot more overt, like up front when I'm kind of like selling the whiskey, and kind of go, just so you know, 220, and it'd be like, okay, very expensive, still want to try it, but like they go into it kind of knowing what the price is, and so they'll make the judgment, do I think it's worth 220, rather than if you leave the price till the end, they kind of go, you've been hiding it 220, you got to be kind of joking. But it was, we still sell plenty of, enough of the 700 mils, but people were kind of going, I'm buying it for my dad, because a high proportion of the people coming through the markets as well were female or younger as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd go, my dad really likes whiskey, but I don't really kind of know a lot about sort of whiskey. And I'm
not prepared to spend $220 on something I may not like.
Yeah, you may not like,
yeah.
But as soon as the price point was below 100, they weren't kind of thinking about the size of the bottle.
Yeah.
It was more like I'm buying a present from a dad. I know likes whiskey. I like the story. I like the label. Whatever is around it. It wasn't then about price. Well, it was about price, but I mean, it was just like kind of an easier way to kind of have that sort of conversation. So, like last weekend, I sold like 6 or 7 200 ml bottles of the market, and like a single bottle of the 700 ml. And I think it's just kind of what you expect. But when reversing it to the distillery door, they definitely sell more 700 ml bottles because people there to drink, they know they're going to a distillery to experience the distillery. And if they like something, they tend to go, all right, I want to walk away. If they're a gin drinker, with a big bottle of gin, or they're going to walk away with a big bottle of whiskey, unless they've spent $500 on lunch and gin. But there's
it was a liquid lunch. Yeah, I think
the salad was $5, and the rest of it was.
We did have a couple of pizzas. And they were quite good, but we had a lot more gin, more gin. And I was with non-gin drinkers as well, and we still polish off that much.
Bellarine makes some good gin.
They do make some cracking.
Carry on, Justin.
Cracking gin.
Just talk over us.
But so, like, for me, it's like the mindsets. So at the distillery door or events, 700 mils are an easier sell. Markets, it's 200s. But the interesting thing then is as well is the consumer. I have no idea how well a 200 ml bottle will go at a whiskey event, a whiskey fair. People are kind of coming and they might be price driven, but I would say they'll be there to buy full bottles. But then
conversely to that, though, from my limited experience in manning stalls at whiskey shows, and when you're there and you're the puncher is hustling down the down the stall at the end, they've already had an absolute gutful. They've tasted everything that is on offer. They're well lubricated, but also at that point they're not. I think at times they're not thinking about buying a bottle, or they're hyper conscious of the price at that point. And quite often, I know myself, I've gone to a whiskey show and not bought a single thing because I couldn't bring myself to spend $180, $220 on a bottle. But a sub 100, I would walk away with something.
Yeah.
Against
buy a few of the ones,
or I might have bought a couple of the sub hundreds in order to be able to take home as much as possible. I think there's a real, I think that's a real challenge for distillers that are doing the market certainly, or doing a whiskey show. Do you want to move something, or potentially move nothing at a whiskey show and have spent? You've been there all day. You're hoarse from telling the same stories to a few hundred different people. You've poured out a good wad of samples that you're not going to recoup. Is it worth having those smaller bottles so that you can at least recoup some cost from it? Or is that counterproductive? I'm not entirely sure how, not being a distiller, not being the retailer yourself, I don't know how to answer that. But as a punter, I'll quite happily walk away with a 200 ml bottle and feel like I've got a good deal, because I paid less than $100 for it, and I'll probably buy 2 if there's a few.
If you were going to ask me, if as a punter, so not as someone running a business or not being a crafty and running a distillery, if I had the choice between a 200ml bottle for just for argument's sake, I've got the Warps Harbour Founders Reserve, or a sub $100 bottle of something that's like a full bottle, whether it be 500 or 700ml, that's been orchestrated to kind of, because there's this like kind of fascination or kind of drive at the moment for the sub $100 bottles. I would go for where I know the quality is, and I'm not saying that the stuff that I've tasted that has been kind of put out recently under $100 isn't okay or isn't good. But personally, as a consumer, I can tell the difference between a bottle that has been created to be the sub $100 market to something like a Warps Harbour, Founders Reserve. And if I'm like wanting to spend $90 rather than $200, I'd rather buy a 200ml of the Warps Harbour than a 500 or 700ml of of distillery X.
Absolutely.
I think that's the point, though, isn't it? Is that talking about shows, if you can walk away with half a dozen of the smaller bottles,
you've had a damn good fucking day.
Yeah,
and you've got lots to show for it.
Because most people go there with a budget.
Yeah.
So you can have a budget of 1 or 2 bottles. Well, then I pay.
Then you but you have a budget and then you blow it. Yeah. But yeah, I remember going down to Tassie and the Salamanca markets, and every second stall there is a different distillery, and every single one of those little distilleries had either a 200ml, or they had a really little one. I've drunk them all. Oh no, there we go. There's a couple. So things like the
really little ones.
Oh yeah, the
Taylor and Smith, those sorts of things. They'll be those small samplers that were maybe
50.
That would have been. Oh well, that's the
mils?
gin. So that's 100ml.
Oh, 100ml. Okay. Yeah.
And I probably would have paid $40 for that.
Yep.
Yeah. But you've got a sample.
But I got a sample of it. I walked away with something in my pocket. I gave them some money, and I bought a shit ton of these things as I walked down through the markets.
It's a cool bottle too.
It's gorgeous. I love. As an aside, I think one of the coolest bottles, the Taylor and Smith bottles, are just awesome. I love them.
Yeah.
But yeah, as someone who wants to try everything.
That's the thing, trying everything.
Trying everything is not feasible.
Yeah.
When you're paying full whack for a bottle.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can get a bid at a market, I will absolutely do that, and I will part with my money without even questioning it. And as I'm walking along through a market such as Salamanca markets, and there must have been 40 distilleries there. I think I bought something from every single one of them. Yeah. And that was a really hard day to walk around the rest of Hobart with all these bottles on my back. Now, if that was 700s, that would not have been possible. But
But then you would not have bought that many bottles.
I also would not have bought that much, and I would not have spread my love around all the distilleries of Tassie. So I think there's a balance. There's obviously a higher cost to produce a smaller bottle. There's a labor cost. There's a physical bottle cost and label cost and SKU management and all the rest of it.
It definitely adds complexity to
a product line.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think for me personally, I think the smaller bottle is an underutilized tool in the Australian market for getting any money rather than none, especially in this really
Tight market, yeah.
tight, fucked up market that we're in at the moment.
Yeah.
Because you must
And-
have discovered at the markets as well that there's been a bit of a change where people will just taste your product, enjoy it, and buy it, to, oh, that's too expensive, and there's a bit of pushback now.
There's never an overt comment that it's too expensive, but you definitely got to work harder for the sales. Like 18 months ago, well, we still got the same KPIs. 18 months ago, especially over like summer, like the KPIs were like so doable, and you were like kind of hitting 50-60% above. Now, like you're definitely working hard to kind of meet those, but it's also quite interesting. There doesn't seem to be a set pattern either that I can see with like with particular markets or whatever. I work in markets all across Victoria, from like 2.5 hours away from the Bellarine to like the ones 20 minutes down the road, and you'll kind of go, oh, I reckon we're going to do really well here, and you kind of tank, and you kind of go, I can't believe we're going to go here, it's going to be like a hard yards, and you kind of shoot the lights out. So I'm finding it hard, definitely finding it hard to call at the moment. It's almost just getting people at the right time almost.
100%, mate. 100% agree. And we're talking to other people, and not even people selling alcohol, just in general, markets and that, they're saying exactly the same thing. You used to be able to predict to an extent. Well, you had expectations in the market, and you'd meet those expectations. Now, you can have, just absolutely nothing, and then you think, what the hell is going on here? And then the next market, wham, it's through the roof, and you go, why? I don't understand. It does your head in, and it definitely adds anxiety to going to markets because you just you don't know.
Interesting question coming from Ian Bruce. Does anyone in Australia use smaller plastic food grade bottles that can be posted direct to people's doors? Something just kicked off in the UK before he moved. I haven't noticed any smaller plastic bottles. Generally, the small.
I've seen
bottles,
pouches. Yep, little stand-up pouches.
Really?
Yeah. Starting to see those creeping.
Because I mean that sort of a taster is
50.
Is very common.
30.
That's a 30. That's a 30.
Plastic, though, is that?
No, that's glass. So you've got a weight cost and a physical cost. Manufacturing cost to that versus a plastic. I know a lot of the little bottles that you get, that you see, the little tiny bottles at the counter at Dan Murphy's and whatever, of all the big brands.
Oh yeah,
they're all plastic. Like your little
plastic.
bottles of Beam and your little bottles of Johnny Red, they're all plastic bottles now. So there's obviously they're out there.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. Definitely. Yeah, right. But as I said, I've seen pouch as well.
Pouches.
Yeah.
Your
little stand-up baby food pouches.
Yeah.
With alcohol.
With a little
little sippy there.
Little sippy.
Wow.
Probably be good to take to the rugby because it wouldn't show up on the little.
Yeah.
I might have to try
Get away with that. Get away with that, definitely. No, look, I'd be interested to see if there are. What do we got there? Bill Brain, someone was kind enough to dump a number of cheap brandy flasks on my nature strip. Winning. Winning. Were they
full?
Were they
full
full?
empty?
Yeah. That's it. It says it saved glass breakage and was recycled, I believe. So easier posted. Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's lost in the post. So what's the point?
And then you've got a lot of drunk posties. A lot of drunk posties.
I can see the benefit in plastic for posting, but
certainly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And for samples.
Touch wood, I haven't had any broken packages yet.
No, have not seen. I don't think I've lost a whiskey yet, thankfully. Interesting. Empty. Phil says empty plastic. That's unfortunate.
Oh, no. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, they could have at least left a couple of full ones in there for you. Disappointing.
That's all the comments.
Yeah, look, they came in thick and fast there.
but I'm interested. I alluded to it before, but I'm interested in your thoughts. So we're talking about kind of sub $100 whiskey, and there are always going to be exceptions. And Remnant put out Golden Fleece, which I believe was $99. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was $99. I've tried it. I didn't buy a bottle, but I've tried it, and it was an exceptional whiskey. But my fear in the kind of drive to the sub $100 whiskey is the compromise of quality and how that can affect the brand. Kind of how do we create a whiskey that's like under $100? Do you guys kind of think that as I mentioned, just using the Warps Harbour as an example, that distilleries like stick to their guns and their the brand ethos and creating like the best whiskey possible, and if it's about having something that the consumer buys under $100, that it is a smaller bottle, as opposed to trying to create a whiskey in whatever manner it is that they can sell as a full bottle that's below $100.
There's definitely a lot of pressure on price.
Yeah.
I'll comment on that.
I was hoping you would.
Yeah.
You better
I
contribute
think you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going back to the distillery. I think you've really got to understand your different market segments, and I think sub 100 in a market environment, in a cellar door environment, you can do it through bottle size. You don't, in my experience, you don't get pushback on the bottle size.
Often.
Often.
There has been a small change recently.
Oh, there's been a change for sure. Yeah. In the last 6 months, I think there's change. But it's more about the taste and the quality, and people appreciate that. And even though it's a smaller bottling, it's not an issue, right? What concerns me is if you try to maintain a larger bottle and sub 100, a lot of distilleries have nowhere to go as far as what are they doing? Are they reducing their margins or what?
especially with excise continually increasing.
Transportation costs up 50%.
Yep.
The bottling, packaging costs going up. Everything's going up, right? Raw materials going up.
Yeah.
But what concerns me is when you see something which is around $100 and you see it out there in the market at $60, and you go, where's this going?
Is that sustainable?
Is that sustainable? And it's concerning. But so coming back to the different segments, if you're into bars and you're into your on premise and your bottle shops and that, your smaller bottlings don't work. In my experience, it has to be the full size bottling. So then you are face to face with a discussion of, well, how do you price it to get into bars? How do you price it to get into bottle shops? So it's a very different environment from a cellar door and a market, I would say. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and it certainly comes down to who you're targeting. I mean, there's still a large portion of the whiskey drinking population that Johnny Walker Red or Johnny Walker Black is their go-to bottle. And they can pick up a bottle of that for much less than $100 as a full-size 700ml bottle.
Yeah, 40%.
At 40%, of course. Now, I think you've got to give kudos to people like Starwood for coming up with twofold, a product that is pretty good and does stand on its own and can compete on a quality level with those well above its price range, but is an introduction to Australian whiskey for those that maybe wouldn't drink Australian whiskey because of the price.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people that see Scotch as the whiskey, and of course you can get a number of Scotches for under $100.
Yeah.
So
it helps if you're making 1 million liters.
It helps if you're making an
Yeah.
absolute fucking shit ton of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But being able to introduce people in that range, in that sub $100 range, to an Australian whiskey that may help then to entice them into a higher price bracket than they would normally be used to, because they've tasted something that was Australian that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think everyone wants to do it, and there's obviously a huge investment in doing so. And there's huge risk.
I think
doing so.
the big thing for the distillers or the owners is, if you had a market, you don't want someone to walk away not buying something.
No.
So if
you've spoken to them and gave them a sample, you want to give them something.
Ideally you want them to buy your big bottles.
Yeah.
But if they walk away with a smaller bottle, it's still
You've
a
still
sale,
got something,
and
that's it.
And if that smaller bottle works out similar to some of the things we've done in the past, where they buy two of those, it's the full price anyway, then why not?
Yeah.
I think you sum it up by saying it's a challenging environment. It's an evolving environment, and everyone's sort of feeling their way through it. There's no real certainty.
And certainly, if the government pulled their finger out and dropped the excise to a manageable level, then these conversations would be entirely different. Yeah.
And on that note,
we do still have another comment come in. So Ian said, so there's one big difference I've noticed in Australia. There are more 500ml rather than 700ml bottles. Thought that maybe it's a thing to do with the amount produced, and it's made Ian reconsider buying the difference between a 500ml and a 700ml bottle.
He's right though about maybe it's a thing to do with the amount produced.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you've got based on the cost of manufacture in Australia, if you can only produce 80 bottles in a batch, because you've got 40 liters, does that add up?
Carry on.
Yeah. But if you've only, no, it's not, especially after how many whiskeys I've had after not drinking for a week. Pat on my back.
You're doing very well.
And on that
note, you've got a limited amount of that you can produce, or a limited amount that you're able to output, and you want to put that into as many bottles as you can. Then you obviously and be able to get sales at a price point that is feasible, then you have to go for a smaller bottle.
Plus, you get it out to more people.
Yeah,
you get it out to more people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's
people
the reason.
pay $280 for a bottle versus $220 for a bottle. It's a
and that was absolutely the driver behind Whisky in Isolation putting it out at 500ml. I knew before, like I started bottling, looking on social media, everyone did 700ml, but like I was working with like 50, 100, 200 max liter barrels, $100 bottle releases, and it's at that size, and it's about getting it to as many people as possible, and then keeping it at a price. I wanted to keep it at the price point below 200. It'd have been no problem. I could have easily bottled it at 700ml, no problem. But the price then would have prorated up to whatever, $240, with people then be going, oh, $240. That's like kind of like a little bit rich. And and you're selling 50 bottles or whatever. So I'd much rather like have the 100, 120 bottles not selling out kind of straight away, but it being sub 200. It's that balance. And you know, Bellary Distillery made the call like straight off the bat to do 700, and it's brilliant because like we've got a really loyal following down on the peninsula. So even their $295 bottles were selling out. But
Amber Lane, of course, have gone the 700ml bottles as well.
They have. So, and that's going to be interesting because my next release being an Amber Lane, and it's a 500ml. So it'll be
Oh, there you go.
Hold on, Sneaky, bring it back in focus.
Oh, hang on.
Garden of Temptation.
Yeah.
Garden of Temptation. So when can we expect? So it's 54%. When can we expect that?
So there's the Victorian Whisky Festival as part of Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. It's on the 16th or the 17th, 16th, I think, of March. So there'll be a public tasting of that whiskey then, but it will go out to the mailing list on a date prior to that. I'm up with Rod bottling in about 3 weeks. And it will be it's I'm pretty excited about this one. It's a double sherry cask, so it's French oak Apera into American oak Oloroso. So the French oak Apera being obviously an Australian sherry, but then the Spanish Oloroso from Fernando de Castilla. So double sherry cask, and then it's gone into a virgin American oak Tempranillo cask. So like kind of the Garden of Temptation. So the temp is kind of an allusion to or alludes to the Tempranillo, but also the Garden of Temptation is because some of the flavor is like big red apple notes and roasted capsicum. So some really yeah. So it's sweet. It's sweet. It's sweet and it's got savory umami notes as well. So it's kind of like a whole kind of like vegetable fruit garden of all sorts. Wow. But as you can imagine with the name Garden of Temptation, there might be some cheeky videos and photos ahead. I'm still working.
So you with the shirt off, just covered. You just covered by a fig leaf.
I was just saying, straight out of the bed, a loincloth straight into the garden. It's a follow-up to the Joyous Six.
I love it. The fig leaf. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I don't think they've got a fig leaf big enough.
It's all about angles.
All about angle. Yeah.
Well, so the best thing to do is jump onto whiskyinisolation.com.au and jump on the mailing list. To get early notification of that one when it is available. So I've just signed up. So I'll be looking forward to hearing about that one. So definitely jump on there and do that. Yeah. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to.
I'm just.
We have to say thank you to the guests.
Thank you first. Then we
have to thank the guests. I understand.
Thank you so much for our samples.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.
I've still got one left.
Carry on.
That'll stay here. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you everyone for tuning in as well. Unfortunately, Facebook fucked us this time. But YouTube is still there, and so I will cross-post it onto Facebook again once it's all done. We'll go up onto the website and all the places where the podcasts go: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, some YouTube podcasts, and a few others as well in the next couple of days. Justin, thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year to you too. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you all. And so we have also, I put up today our next episode, which is on the 15th. I did assume that they were locked in.
They are locked in.
They are locked in because I just thought I'll lock them in.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
It's one way of doing it.
And yeah, I figure if I announce it, then
Ed,
they can't pull out.
Ed and Marty are well onto it.
So on the 15th, we've got Ed and Marty from Banks and Solander here in Botany in Sydney. So they'll be with us on the 15th. So stay tuned for that, and we will catch you all then. Justin, hang around while I roll the outro, and everyone else catch us wrong.